Yeah, so apparently that guy from Council of Geeks, he says he's going to sue me. Yeah, sue me. And who the hell does he think he is, eh? How many viewers has he got? What? 20,000. Really? Oh, somebody call the fire brigade! Hello and welcome to another Behind the Box. This week we're looking at episode 8 of series 11 called The Witchfinders. So the story opens this week in the 17th century in Lancashire. We don't see the TARDIS arrive, we don't see inside the TARDIS, we're smack bang straight into the story. Of course, the TARDIS has gone wrong once again and we should have been at the coronation of Elizabeth I. Now, knowing the history of Elizabeth I, that could have been quite an interesting situation, but it's brushed over very, very quickly. So we're introduced to some new characters here at a witch trial. There's a ducking going on down at the river with a grandmother, and there are two characters called Becca and Willa. Now, Becca is the one leading the trial, and Willa is the granddaughter of the grandmother who's being drowned. What we don't realise until a little bit later is that Becca and Willa are actually related. It's their distant cousins, I think, and basically the grandmother is the grandmother of both people. But we find out that later. And so the witch trial was a ducking stool, which was a method used as amongst other methods that they used to use at the time, including, of course, burning witches at the stake. That wasn't featured here, and as later on we see why. The sonic paper is used, and the Doctor introduces herself as the Witchfinder General, and they decide to investigate what's going on. After the Doctor had said that nobody should interfere with history, and the companions literally beg her to try and save this grandmother from drowning, and which she does, and kicks off the events of the story. And so enters another character played by Alan Cummings. King James I turns up, a very religious man who is trying to banish Satan, that he believes are in all these witches. It's a big witch hunt. But of course, they're not witches, are they? They are aliens, and in this story, it's the Morax army. Kind of gave me a reminder of the Vampires of Venice, except this time, instead of vampires, we've got kind of zombie-like creatures. And of course, what happens in this story as well, it was so obvious it was going to happen that the Doctor is accused of being a witch. I bet you called that as well. I certainly did. So, looking at our regular characters, we see that Yaz and Ryan are functional at best this week. They're just there just to move little bits of the story along, ask a few questions. Nothing much more than that, really. Graham assumes more of a Doctor-like role here, probably because of the situation of the gender, which is hit on a bit later on. The Doctor, I think she gave a mixed performance this week. Some bits were good, some bits were not so good. It certainly wasn't as hard-hitting as the episode last week. We had some nice little speeches there. Some of the comedy worked really, really well, and we're getting sort of different kind of Matt Smith, Tennant-esque humour coming out of her now. But there were just a couple of little bits that didn't quite work for me, but not too many. It's getting a little bit easier to watch and get an idea of what sort of Doctor she's trying to be. So Becca becomes the villainess in this piece. She's been invaded by this alien sentient being, taken over her body. Rather reminded me of Venom in how venom would take over somebody's body. And so we've got King James as a character in this story, and Alan Cummings is loving playing this part, absolutely relishing in it. It's a bit Shakespearean and pantomime-ish as it goes through, and whether that works for you or not, it's difficult to say, but he's certainly giving a good performance, and he's certainly a very, very good actor. The character of Willa was a bit more melodrama. She was there to kind of give us the more emotional side of the story. We had to connect with her. I don't feel we actually connected with her enough. I don't think we felt the weight of her situation and the people in her family and what had happened to them quite enough to really give it a lot of weight. So this episode is a bit of a mixed bag, and again I think it's going to be one of those that some people will like, some people won't like. I'm kind of on the fence on this one. Very much a Shakespearean comedy stroke tragedy this episode was. The humour is there to kind of douse the flames of the horrific imagery that's going on. And at times it was a little bit off-putting. It didn't quite know which side of the fence it was sitting on, whether it was meant to be comedic or whether it was meant to be horrifying or a drama. It didn't quite know where to sit itself. The Doctor's gender came up in this episode, as we kind of thought it might. There have been other situations where it could have come up in episodes that we've had, but this particular one, it really does show itself, and we get a little comment from Jodie saying that sometimes she wishes she was a man again because she doesn't have to defend herself. It was a split-second moment, but it was in there. Again, we've got exposition. Exposition this time was more of a history lesson. We're getting told people's backstory, people's history from just having a conversation. King James just told us everything about his past and what had happened to him just through a conversation with Ryan. Didn't feel quite natural, and you get a feeling that they're playing a little bit loose with history here. This character of King James is almost like the characters of Queen Victoria in Tooth and Claw, Shakespeare himself in the Shakespeare Code, where Doctor Who's playing a little bit loose with those particular caricatures, even Winston Churchill. So they're there just as a kind of figurehead that you recognise, but actually the characteristics of them are not quite as deep as the real characters in history. I felt the ending was way too rushed, and we all saw it coming, did we not? Did you not think it was fire that was going to defeat them? I certainly did. As soon as I saw the ducking stools at the beginning, I thought the natural way to go with this story would have been to have had them turn up and they were just about to light a fire and burn somebody. That would be the automatic witch hunt trope, if you like, that you would see. Instead, we had the ducking stool method, which is another way of killing somebody, but it's not the one that we all automatically draw to when we think about witch hunts. So it was kind of obvious that they were avoiding that because that was how this particular alien was going to be defeated, by fire. The pathos clashes with the humour in this piece. I said about the drama and the Shakespearean, the pantomime-ish. It doesn't feel at times that they're taking it too seriously. Now, whether that's intentional or not, but I couldn't be fully invested in this story and get right into the heart of it because I was kept being thrown out. You know, you got a really dark moment where the Doctor defeats the alien, and then King James decides he's going to finish them off once and for all, and we get this comedic shouting, "Burn the witch! Burn the witch!" And the pathos is lost. You know, the Doctor's really cross with him about doing this, but it just doesn't feel weighted again. And so we have the village name, which was Bilehurst, which means sacred tree, erased from history, to kind of whitewash over and reset the dial, if you like. We've had a whole episode of strange things happening, and to make sure that that doesn't affect history, it's totally erased. I loved Graham's reference to Tarantino, the I will strike thee down with great vengeance. And of course, King James shouts out, oh, that's Ezekiel. And Graham, of course, says, no, it's Tarantino. Well, it actually is Tarantino. I think you'll find that that reference isn't even referenced in the Bible. I think Tarantino made it up. I'm not 100% sure on that. You'll have to tell me in the comments whether that's correct or not, but I'm pretty sure that I've read somewhere that it was written for the film and wasn't actually a proper Ezekiel quote. I think there's one very similar, but it's not a direct quote. So why King James would have recognized that as Ezekiel, who knows? So to sum up, when we come to giving this one a score, it's a bit difficult. It's got a rushed ending. It's very panto, it's very thespian. You might as well call it Carry On King or Carry On Burning or something like that. Very slow paced in sections of it. It really does drag, this one. The characters, our regulars, there was no real development of their character this week. And the bit I can't get over is that the grandmother had died, the cousin had died, many more members of the family had died, many more villagers had died, and there wasn't enough time taken just to kind of mourn that and give it a bit of respect. It didn't seem to kind of happen. So therefore, this particular episode this week, I'm going to give a 6 out of 10. Some of you will probably say that actually it should be higher than that, and I have said that when the series is finished, I'm going to have a good look at this in detail and see if some of those rankings need to shift. But my initial impression is that's a 6 out of 10. So there we have it, The Witchfinders. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you think it was one of the better historicals? Did you not think it was so good? You tell me what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because that's how we all keep in touch. And we'll see you all again next time.